Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. In each episode, we're going to have conversations with some of the top investors, superstar founders, as well as well-known tech company executives in Silicon Valley. We'll have a coffee chat with them to learn their way of thinking and actionable tips on how they build or invest in a successful company. Before we start our show today, I want to make sure the listener, aka you, understand that everything a person say on the podcast only reflects to hers or his own opinion, not the show or the company they work at. Our guest today is the CEO of Meetup. He helped the company grow to more than 44 million members and more than 330,000 groups. Meetup events have been in more than 190 countries in the world. Prior to Meetup, he was a CEO of Investopedia, where he helped the company grow to 4x value to about 36 million in revenue and 30 million user base. Earlier, he worked as the CEO of DoubleClick, president of Seeking Alpha, SVP of 1-800-Flowers. He also teaches entrepreneurship in Columbia University. His name is David Siegel. In last episode, we talked about David's background, how he reached out to executives to be their assistant, and how David joined Duane Reade. Welcome to the second part of the interview with David.
So that's how I ended up at Duane Reade, and coincidentally, I ended up getting another job also similar to that, but I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like you're super entrepreneurial. So you mentioned that you basically reach out to for like 30, 40 companies. Did you create a list? Like what kind of company were you shooting for? And like,
okay, so you want the details?
Yeah, I want details. You email them or standing in front of their office to be like, hey, here's
So this is a long time ago. No, I'm an old guy. This is 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated business school in 2003. So in 2002, there was this data resource called OneSource, where it listed the names of all of the executives and leaders in a company. And you can probably find that in Hoover's or some other resource now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's lots of places you go online to find the names. LinkedIn, wherever.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I did is I wanted to go to like work for Major League Baseball or the NBA or Duane Reade or Orange Flowers or JetBlue, all these places. And I knew that a warm introduction would be more successful than a cold introduction, right? Mm-hmm. So I found the top 50 people, like all vice presidents and above, in these 30 companies. And then I looked online to find out whether the derivation of the email is David.Siegel, David_Siegel, D Siegel, David at, whatever the derivation is of an email address. And then I figured it out. So then I created a spreadsheet of the top 50 executives at like 30 companies. You're talking about 1,500 people. And then what their email addresses were. And then in one night, I just decided to stay up all night long and copy paste an email to individual email to all 1,500 of those individuals. And then what would happen is like some VP of facilities would be like, why are you emailing me? The right person to email is so-and-so, is Janice. So then I would email Janice and saying, hey, Janice, Ralph told me I should follow up with you.
It's
everything that I said there was totally true because Ralph did tell me I should follow with Janice. Now, I didn't say I knew Ralph, but Ralph told me I should follow with Janice. So then I was able to parlay all those and then Janice was like, well, if Ralph told you to follow up with me, then sure, let's chat.
That's a genius move. I love those little details. It really I feel like it really makes a lot of sense. As you mentioned previously, you didn't like people sending you generic emails. What do you put in your emails back then?
Right. So
you wrote that basically. Here's
the answer. This was, first of all, a long, long time ago. When I don't think people sent quite as many personal emails back then. And I did volume over quality. And the volume did lead to a whole host of conversations. The subject line I find is the best subject line, is actually a very simple one, which is just chat question mark. Then they don't know what it's necessarily about. It could be something important. It could be not. So because they see chat question mark, they're more open to reading it. Because it's a question, they people see a question and their natural inclination psychologically is then to want to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll open it up to see what it's about. And then I basically would say, I'm interested in I don't remember the exact words, but it was very short. I think a general best practice is it should fit in the auto preview section of an email. So you could see it like super efficiently. It's not like a long thing. My resume wasn't attached. It wasn't anything. It was just like, and always ending with a question. Who would the best, can I follow up with your assistant to set up a follow-up meeting? I knew lots of people had assistants. So I want to make it very easy. So a lot of times people would just reply, and they follow and they CC their assistant. If I said, do you want to meet? They probably want to reply back. So I gave them like a very direct suggestion. Can you please like CC your assistant so that we can now chat? And sometimes just quickly, people will just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll CC my assistant.
Yeah, after you initiated the conversation over email, what do you say to the person that you were meeting? As for Dwayne Reed, did you meet with the CEO? How do you go from the meeting?
Yeah, okay. So let's take Dwayne Reed. It was after business school. So for Dwayne Reed's case, I was able to I didn't care who I got in front of. I just want to get in front of someone. So I was able to get in front of the CFO because the CFO happened to have gone to Wharton, which is the school that I was in. And I think they were more inclined to reply back because it was his alma mater. I didn't even know that at the time. So I got in front of him, and then he put me in touch with the head of HR for the company. And then I met with the head of HR in person, because in person is always more productive than a phone call. And anytime people were like, oh, let's set up a call, I'd be like, actually, I'm going to be in New York next week. Why don't we meet in person? Like, okay, I better get into New York now. And then I met with the head of HR, and then I pitched him on creating a new job, as opposed to just like, like, so what jobs do you have open? Who cares what jobs you have open? It's not important what jobs they have open. It's simple. Like, you need to create your job, create your role, and pitch it. And then I met with the CEO because I pitched a job. And then the CEO ultimately said, no, we will not hire you. But then I went back and I turned it into an internship. And I said, hey, you have nothing to lose. Just hire me as an intern. And then they said yes.
Did they pay you at the beginning, or do you work for free?
Yeah, no, it was a paid internship.
Yeah,
well, here's an even better one, Grace. You're going to love this one. This will be really quick. So 3 years later, when I was at Dwayne Reed, I get an email from a friend, and it says, David, look, there's a job posting on Wharton's alumni database. And I was like, what is it? So I looked on Wharton's alumni database, and it said 1-800-Flowers CEO looking for an assistant to the CEO. Oh my God. 3 years ago, I talked to the CEO of 1-800-Flowers, Jim McCann, to try to convince him to hire me when I was at Wharton. Like, there was one of the companies on my list. And I had talked to him for 20 minutes. It was like an amazing conversation. And he ultimately said no. So I then sent him an email, and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but 3 years ago, we had a conversation about about me being an assistant to the CEO. If in any way that led to you posting something on Wharton and creating that job, that's so cool. We should get together. So he just emailed me back 5 words, I swear. His 5 words were, I was looking for you.
Oh my God. Wow. That's amazing. It comes
So you never know what's going to
circle.
happen.
Yeah. I feel like that's just like really highlights like these kind of relationships you have to create and go after for yourself. And I love that. I love how creative you are. Like, I mean, how do you learn these kind of things? Like, or do you just like, it just come out of nowhere? Or do you read them in a novel? Or like, how do you create these kind of like solution for yourself?
I don't know. I think it's not like you learn things from other people. I mean, yes, you do generally, but I think generally the more fearful someone is, the more that they're going to go down the standard path. The less fearful someone is, the more you're willing to put yourself out there. You're willing to fail. You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to look stupid. You're willing to put yourself in a position where you don't really know anything. You're going to learn it on the spot. And I think that, like we started in the beginning, like a lot does come down to parenting. And if you're build confidence with a child, hopefully not cockiness, but confidence, then you feel that you're able to put yourself out there and take an alternative path to the same path that everyone else takes. While everyone else is like, I'm going to do consulting for 10 years or investment banking and kill myself for 3 years and do this and then do that for 3 years or this for 3 years. Instead it's like, hey, I have very little to lose. So you might as well try it. And it's just it's a mentality thing, I think, more than anything. And I think the mentality is it never hurts to try. Be persistent, but not annoying, obviously. And try to create as many options for yourself as you can. And then good things will happen by creating options for yourself.
One of the things we haven't talked about is you went to Wharton and you got jobs at top consulting firms like BCG. Do you think they hired you because of you're smart and good at what you do? You're super confident going after your goals. How much of your confidence come from your elite education and a perfect resume?
Yeah, my resume was crap. Honestly, the resume doesn't mean anything. It means very little. So much about figuring out how to get your foot in the door. I think that I was probably below average in terms of my Wharton class, in terms of like sheer intelligence or whatever, or average, let's say. I think you stand out by, I think I was good at trying to build relationships with people, but it wasn't because I had this like larger goal. Honestly, it was because I just genuinely like people. I like learning from people. I'm curious. I have a lot of different areas of life that I'm interested in. And I love people. And I think I guess you can't teach that. And I don't think it's about intelligence or resume or anything else like that. I think being able to be genuinely curious and interested in another person, not fake, but genuinely interested in another person, is a key component to ultimately being successful and caring and want them to succeed.
I really like that, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a really actually doable story. You make it sound really doable. So I feel like
it is doable. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to work crazy hours. You don't have to go to the top schools. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there, just like you're doing, Grace. Be willing to build relationships with people that you may not deserve, quote unquote, on paper to have a relationship with. Who says you don't? You're as special as anyone else. Not just you, but anyone who's listening is as special as anyone else, probably even more special. And you have to feel like other people have just as much that they can learn from you as you from them. And anyone could do that. I would say that there's a great book, and if you haven't read it, then you should, Grace. But if not, then read it. But other people should read it too. And it's one of the best business books out there. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah,
Dale Carnegie. And there are some things in the book that are really old school, and frankly, it's a serious problem. It's not really. It's a problem for today's age that there's not any examples, frankly, of women or people of color that are in the book. Understanding that the lens of when it was written was the 1920s, when unfortunately the world was in a much worse place. There's so much that can be learned from the book. It's required reading in my class, for example, and I think it's an important business book. And I think it helps people to really understand how to ultimately be more successful. Anyone can do it.
Thank you for sharing with us and being so open about your story. Going back to your journey, after you went to work at Duane Reade, you helped create a DR Express. What do you see as the company's growth potential, and how do you implement the strategies back in time? You negotiated a deal with Citigroup, Viacom, Time Warner, and a lot of top companies. I know that you had a lot of experiences reaching out to leaders, but how do you turn the first conversations into partnerships?
I mean, to me, everything comes from, as an entrepreneur, and everyone's an entrepreneur, right? Every person is an entrepreneur, especially when it comes to their careers. But as an entrepreneur, you have to find the pain point. You have to find like the key problem. And if everything that you do is a result of understanding a key pain point that people have, that people acknowledge as a pain point, then good things come out of that. So specifically at Duane Reade, which was again like 17 years ago, but at Duane Reade, there was a big pain point in the pharmacy industry where people would go to the pharmacy, drop off a script, have to wait around for an hour, wait around, then go back again, pick up the script. It was just very inefficient. So the CEO and I came up with really an idea which is, again, this is 17 years ago, where we would have a kiosk. You would be able to video conference with a pharmacist 24/7. And you'd be able to scan your prescription. And then by the time you got to one of our stores, it was automatically immediately ready for you for pickup. So it saved a lot of time. And they didn't have other ways of doing things back then. So the bottom line is that's an example where there's a pain point. People hated it. So we developed this thing and we put them in hundreds of hospitals and senior living facilities and companies. And we had tens of like millions of dollars going through something called Duane Reade Express kiosks, which again was an interesting technology for its time a long time ago. But it started with having a pain point. And the same thing goes with when you're trying to get clients or do business development deals. Figure out what the pain point is. Don't just try to shove your solution in. Don't try to shove your company in. But everything needs to be framed in, okay, what is the pain that you are going through right now? And how can my solution help you with the current pain point that you happen to have as a company? And that's it. And if you can make a match between the pain point of an individual or the pain point of a company and your solution, you got to win. And if not, you say, you know what? This doesn't sound like we could really help you here. But if we ever are able to create something that could help you, we'll let you know. And so frame everything in terms of problem solution orientation.
Yeah, I love what you said about finding pain points and figuring out how your solution can solve the problem instead of straight up selling. Back in time, you built partnerships with Citigroup, Viacom, and Time Warner. What do you see were their pain points? And how did you and your team solve them?
Yeah. So it varied because it's about storytelling. So you need to figure out what's the pain point story and how could your solution help them. So for example, if it's a senior living facility, the pain point is that if you're a senior, it's much harder for you because you're less mobile to go to a pharmacy, wait at the pharmacy and come back. But if you have a kiosk at your facility and you go and use the kiosk, we have someone help you to teach you how to use the kiosk, and then we deliver it back to the facility, then it's a huge win for residents. So we would we gave it free actually to the owner of the senior living facility. And then they would have all their residents actually use it. And then we had a huge growth in number of subscriptions and purchases on Duane Reade because it was a big Duane Reade kiosk. Kind of, that was like an airline kiosk. There's no person there at the location. So the sell point for the owner of the facility was we can make the lives of your residents, of your senior residents easier at no cost to you. You can? No cost to me? Great, let's do it. If you're a hospital and you know that over half of the subscriptions that you write end up not getting filled, then we could go to a hospital administrator and say, we could increase the compliance rate of people who get prescriptions. We have prescriptions from people who get discharged out of your emergency room by making it much easier for people who get discharged to get their first prescriptions. You can increase compliance rates so that people don't end up coming back to the emergency rooms, which ultimately then saves me money. How much does that cost? Nothing. Okay, let's do it. So, it's about like figuring out what the story is to address the pain point for each of the different, went to heads of HR for companies. We could create a special service for your employees that no other companies have and your competitors don't have. So your employees can appreciate being an employee at Viacom even more. Because you're providing an easy way for them to get prescriptions and go to the pharmacy. You could do that. What does it cost? Nothing. So again, same exact thing.
Yeah,
pain
absolutely.
Point, solution.
And nothing. I'm just kidding.
And no cost.
No
it's still
cost.
a lot easier.
Yeah. Then after your success at doing Read, you worked at 1-800-Flowers, Seeking Alpha, and Investopedia. By the way, I like Investopedia the most. When I was preparing for job interviews in the past, I was using it every day.
It's a great mission in Investopedia. It's the world's largest financial education kind of business, and Investopedia has educated like hundreds of millions of people around finance. So it was a fun time to run the company.
For sure. For Investopedia, you grew the team from 26 to 150 people. You revamped the entire executive team. What was the conversation like when you revamped the team? Tell us about what was the opportunity you saw in this company. Who did you bring on board to scale the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was more of an evolution than a revolution in Investopedia. Investopedia was always like a terms company where it's just kind of a dictionary of finance. And we wanted to figure out how can we turn like a financial dictionary into something much, much bigger. So we created all these alternative business areas like a certification. It's created something called Investopedia Academy, where you get a certification and learn all these new courses, just like Udemy, Udacity, or Khan Academy. We started investing in news so that people can learn more in the context of what's happening today than just kind of stuff that had been written, 5-10 years ago. But for Investopedia, it was more, this is a company that ranks high in everything that it ever publishes. Let's analyze the results of how much we need to spend to publish something and what the return on that spend is. And we ended up figuring out that if we 10x the amount that we published, every time we publish something, it's very profitable. So let's just publish 10x more. And we published a lot more. And we published a lot of really quality articles that had a tremendous amount of traffic, which then turned into a lot of traffic and revenue growth for the company. So we just were able to figure out how to kind of scale the business very cost effectively. In terms of the personnel, some of the leaders have been with the company for 5 or 10 years prior, and sometimes there's a malaise and a more laid back attitude that exists when you've been in a company for a long time. And nothing against those individuals. Some of them were exceptional, and had they not been in Investopedia, they would have ended up being more successful because they could think differently. And sometimes it just requires saying, you did an amazing job. Start looking for something else. We want to bring in some different thinking, to kind of bring us to the next level. And that's what we mostly did in Investopedia.
I like that you're also thinking for them. As you said, if they leave Investopedia, maybe they would be more successful.
Yeah, it happens very frequently. Very frequently.
In terms of monetizing a platform, you did a great job at monetizing Seeking Alpha, Investopedia, and now you're running Meetup. When you started working at these companies, how do you quickly come up with monetization strategies for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one size fits all. I think some companies have only one revenue stream. And you need to look at the company and be like, is that the right revenue stream, or are there multiple different revenue streams that could be better? So in the case of Investopedia, the company was really just an ad-supported site, and we added on a subscription site, an e-commerce business, a lead gen business, and we grew revenue by actually adding on additional kind of business areas. Whereas at Meetup, the company had been doing a whole lot of different things, and almost too many different things, and was kind of a little bit all over the place. And we said, we're doing too many different things when I came in, and we actually decreased the number of things that we're focused on. And so we need to have more focus, and by having more focus, we're ultimately going to be more successful. And we shut down a bunch of different kind of initiatives and that the company was focused on, so that we can ultimately do a better job in kind of what our core is, which is helping to build communities and have amazing events in those communities. There was a lot of distractions that was going on at Meetup. So I think it's the key is there's no, again, panacea, there's no one way thing, but you should, but it's important for a CEO who comes in to come in and look at what's happening in a company, and are they quote unquote sleepy and just been doing the same thing forever, which is Investopedia, and there's opportunities for different things, or are they kind of overly ambitious and doing a lot of different things, but not doing an amazing job at any one of them, which was actually the case in Meetup, where you need to kind of focus the business more. And so it's different approaches on the situation. But a lot has to do with like whether you need to defocus or increase focus.
Yeah. Tell us about what was your first week like when you started running these companies. Did you spend time read the balance sheet or talking to everyone in the company? What did you do?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I had my first day at Meetup, I had I stood up in front of 250 people and they were like, tell us the strategy of the company, David. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, this is my day one. We're going to build a process to figure out what the strategy is. And you're going to be a big part of figuring out that strategy. So I put out 7 big strategic questions. For example, what are we doing that we should stop doing? And other questions. And we then put together working groups of like 10 people for each of those questions. And then we put very aggressive timelines of what needs to be accomplished and templates by each of the work groups. And then we made some very important strategic decisions, but we did it in an empowered way. We did it collaboratively. And then as opposed to me just like dictating things, because what the heck do I know? I just started. Job is to be, the orchestra leader and to help people to figure out how to prioritize the things that are most important, but not to like dictate that in any way.
We are at the last part of our conversation today. I have 3 questions for you. What is your favorite book? Who would you invite to your dinner party? And who made the biggest impact in your career or life?
Okay. Favorite book. So I already talked about how to win friends and influence people. So that's probably my favorite business book. My favorite non-business book is a book by James Mishra called The Source, which is about Israeli archaeologists and just absolutely amazing historical graph of 2,000 years of Israeli history. But my second favorite business book is probably The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I think it's just a really fun book by Ben Horowitz. You can learn a lot from that book. It's also a book in my course that I have students read. Favorite dinner. Who would I have dinner with? I mean, I love history. I really, really love history. And one of the most fascinating characters in history, and even though this is cliche, so I hate to say it, but Abraham Lincoln is an incredibly interesting figure in history, because as a leader, he had something called a team of rivals. He brought all the people that hated him the most and had the most against his presidency to become his cabinet. And that's just remarkable, because people typically did backroom decisions around things. It was obviously ahead of his time around many other social issues, which are still not even close to where they need to be today. I would say Abraham Lincoln. And then, in terms of not to be too cliche, and then what was the last question?
The last question is, who made the biggest impact in your career? Or life?
My wife.
Oh, nice.
My wife. So my wife is like an executive. She is an executive coach. And what's great about being an executive coach and being an executive is I get like built-in coaching all the time. So I'm lucky. And what I have to pay is really a very reasonable rate. Just kidding. I don't
just
pay
owe your salary.
So I would say that we're very lucky to have a really great partnership. And I would say she's more influential in my life than anything else, both personally and professionally. So that's my answer.
Wow, that's lucky you. And thank you so much for coming on to the show.
This was fun. Loved it. Thank you again, Grace.
That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Smart Venture Podcast. If you like it, please leave us a quick review and hit subscribe so you don't miss any tips from the experts. If you want to receive our updates, please leave your email at smartventurepod.com. If you want to connect with me, all my socials are at Grace Gong GG. Beside LinkedIn, it's just Grace Gong. I'd love to connect with you and let me know your thoughts about the show. See you next time.